Okay, so let me start out by talking about the program. Um, we gave out in 2019 close to $1 million through our small grant program, um, and that for first-time applicants, they can request up to $5,000. But then once we've worked with them before, they're welcome to submit proposals that can go up to $20,000. Um, we award grants quarterly. So we have a committee, a review committee made up of senior people from the zoo, as well as several people from representing the community, board members. And we will review grants for 2 sessions, one per month. And then the third month we vote. And so we're giving awards, we're constantly giving awards. And so the way it works for us is first come, first serve. The sooner you get your proposal to us, the sooner it will get in the queue for review. We have a score sheet, and Jen mentioned the score sheet that Oklahoma City uses. Ours is very similar. And for us, we also do something called a pre-proposal. So if you've never gotten a grant from the Columbus Zoo, you go online to the website, you find out about the pre-proposal, and you send us kind of an outline of what the grant proposal would look like. And that allows us to make sure that it's a good fit with the program. And if it is, then we'll get back to you and say, okay, go ahead and submit a full proposal. So um, we're working in 73 countries right now. And um, I wish I could show you the full slide, but this seems to work. Anyway, we want to make sure our grant program is aligning with our conservation mission. And so our grant program is very applied conservation oriented. We want something that works with local people, and in many cases involves education, has some on the ground impact for wildlife. We can't be everything to everyone. And so we typically don't support basic research. So somebody asked about taxonomics or any kind of nomenclature related work. If somebody sent us a proposal and said, we're doing a genetic analysis of a species found in a vernal pool, well, that work is very important and it's good scientific information to have unless it has a strong tie-in to conservation actions and something that might benefit those species. It's not something that would be a good fit with our program. As I said, we've got projects now in 73 different countries. Um, Jen mentioned something that I thought was very important. We do not typically um, fund an individual. We like to support their organization. In many cases, we already have their organization's banking information. This is particularly important for international organizations. So you'll find that many conservation organizations have different areas of interest. There are zoos that will focus on a particular geographic area, something they may be highlighting at their facility, or particular species. We certainly, some folks can't fund every single proposal that comes through, and it's a way of limiting the pool of proposals. Um, some zoos focus on the species that they may have in their collection. So there's different ways of doing it. Some zoos focus on long-term projects and very few shorter-term projects. Our zoo is kind of a blend, and we support all animals, as you can see in this picture, whether we have them in our collection or not. If it's important to conservation, we're interested in supporting it. We are multidisciplinary, so we will support projects that involve education, programs that involve capacitation, particularly of local people, whether it's to train people to do wildlife monitoring, or if it's a law enforcement particular activity, or training trainers, whatever it happens to be, we're interested in that kind of capacitation. We also support conservation-related research, and we get a number of proposals every year where that research may lead to wildlife translocations, reintroductions, testing new methodologies, that kind of thing. We support projects that involve community behavior and changing behaviors in areas that are important to wildlife. We do support projects where where a community may learn how to use fuel-efficient stoves, or how to grow fuel-efficient crops, or protect fields from elephants. Whatever the case is, we're very interested in looking at things that may provide alternatives to individuals to help them find improvements to their own livelihoods and well-being. In fact, a lot of times what we find is you can't really do conservation unless you have the buy-in from local communities and local organizations. So we are interested in taking care of basic human needs when there's a tie-in conservation. We support projects that are potentially advocacy projects, like reducing not only the supply of the wildlife and the illegal wildlife trafficking industry, but also reducing the demand, and working with people who are developing educational materials, or working with law enforcement, whatever it takes to reduce the illegal wildlife trade. We also support some of the wildlife rescue centers throughout the world, where you have animals, particularly threatened and endangered species, that are seized by authorities and need to be cared for with the eventual goal of reintroduction. And if not reintroduction, certainly education and outreach. As I said, some organizations focus on long-term projects. They've developed a relationship with certain partners, and we want to continue working with them. And we have those kinds of partners. You see Laurie Marker at the bottom of the slide there with a cheetah. We support Cheetah Conservation Fund, and every year they send us a proposal. We do annual proposals, but they send us a proposal that may build onto an existing project. And if we've had success with them and they've provided reports and sometimes involved our staff, then there's a good chance that we're going to continue to support the project. But we also support projects that are startup projects, where we want to give somebody a chance. We want them to cut their teeth on a good, strong conservation project, because we see a lot of potential in that person, that individual. And we've had this, and it was very interesting when I was recently at a CITES conference of the parties, and I met a delegate who was representing the country of Rwanda. And when I told him I was from the Columbus Zoo, he said, "Oh, the Columbus Zoo, I love the Columbus Zoo. You helped me when I was a young veterinarian just starting out." And so anytime we can do something like that, when we recognize really good people in the field, we do want to help them. The other thing, we set money aside for emergency grants. Now, we know that there are emergencies all the time that affect wildlife and the people working to protect wildlife. And so if these emergencies happen with people we've supported within the last 5 years, they can contact us, and we can help them out as best we can. You can see in that picture, in these three pictures, the top picture is of a rare African antelope called the Hirola. It used to be called Hunter's hartebeest, and there's only about 500 of them left, most of them in northern Kenya along the Somali border. Well, there was a drought affecting that area, and we were notified by project leader there that the communities need water for their livestock, and he certainly wants wildlife for the Horola, and we certainly didn't want to see that competition, and we didn't want to see the antelope poach. So we were happy to help him get the borehole drilled that he needed and have water brought to all parties involved. The picture below shows a manatee rehabilitation center that was destroyed by a hurricane that hit Puerto Rico, and we supported them as well. And then on the right, you see a bathtub full of turtles or tortoises. These are radiated tortoises that were found in somebody's house, about 10,000 of them on the island of Madagascar, which is the only place where you find radiated tortoises. And we were alerted by the Turtle Survival Alliance that, hey, we've got all these animals, we need a place to put them, we need to triage them, we need to work with law enforcement, all sorts of things, but they needed it right away. And so we provided funds to support them with that. And not only that, we supplied some staff to help them as well. So for us, it's more than funds. You know, a lot of people will look at the grant program and they'll say, oh, that's checkbook conservation. You're not really making a difference. I think we are making a difference because these projects do need funding. But if we can add to that the expertise that we have with us, with colleagues, with partners, to really make it a fulfilling partnership, it's a much more meaningful grant. And we've been able to do that on a number of occasions. So now I want to, it works, okay, to give you some general thoughts on when you're preparing the grant proposal. And you've heard about many of these through our last couple of speakers. This is something that every grant organization wrestles with. And before I was at the Columbus Zoo, I used to review grants for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. These were bird related or species related, you know, rhinos and tigers and great apes, things like that. And so even in these major $50,000 grant proposals, you find the same kinds of things, the same kinds of strong points and challenges that you find in the smaller grant proposals. So the first thing I want to point out, and I have 4 slides of tips and tricks, and then we will get to questions. But the first thing is make sure that what you have is a good fit with the grant program. One of the things that happened to us not too long ago was somebody put on social media that Columbus Zoo has a grant program for anything wildlife related. And we got flooded. People weren't even looking at the criteria for that. When I was at Fish and Wildlife, somebody put out a book on free things you can get from the federal government. And they listed money for this, for these particular species. And the website almost crashed because there were so many applications. So really take a look to see if your project fits with our program. For us, as I mentioned, it's mostly an applied conservation grant program. The second thing is to make sure that the grant proposal is in the grantor's language. Now that might seem obvious, but we have had grant proposals that were written in Spanish or written in French, and we really need that translated. Some of us can speak other languages, but not every reviewer can. And it's interesting too, if you use something like Google Translate, even that's better than nothing, but that may not capture the essence of what you want to say in your native language. So as Jen mentioned earlier, it's certainly a good idea to have somebody proofread what you write and have somebody who speaks the language of the grantor to take a look at it. Another important point, make the grant clear. And I say that because not every reviewer is going to be a scientist. Not every one of them is an expert in your area of expertise. So make it so that somebody who may not necessarily have that level of education or background can understand it and understand why it's important. If you put too much information in it, people will get confused and the reviewer will take a look at it and then say, what did I just read? So it's really important that the grant is clear. We ask that it also be written in a very succinct way so that you're not giving us a lot of extra language. And I say that particularly to those of you who might be putting together a grant proposal for a graduate student. Um, Many of us have been graduate students and we know what it's like to put together a proposal and we know what it's like to write a thesis or a dissertation and you put everything in there. We don't want everything for the grant proposal. Keep it succinct, get right to the point. We don't want to cut and paste that looks like it's somebody's literature review from their thesis. We know what that looks like too. You want to make things as easy and clear for the reviewers as you can. Again, proofread the proposal. I do a lot of writing, and usually, by the time I'm done something, my head is just aching and I'm ready to just send it out. But I know that's not the way to do it because I need to come back a couple days later with a clear head and look at it and read it and say, is that what I really meant to say? And if I can, I'd like other people to take a look at it. We have communications people at the zoo. You may have communications people at your organization too. Let them take a look at it. Maybe they can come up with a way to use more impactful wording or find a way to make what you say really come from the heart, really, really special. So certainly proofread, because there's nothing worse than reading through somebody's proposal and links don't work, spelling is wrong, they have different kinds of fonts or something is bolded and something is not, probably because they cut and pasted. So it's very important to proofread. Um, okay, so the next thing is, why is this project so important? Um, we want to know how it's going to contribute to saving species. And in fact, a lot of people um, who love conservation, or what we see as conservation, may not fully understand what conservation is all about. There's field conservation and things we do in sustainability, like recycling and so forth. A lot of people use saving species. So tell us, how does your project save species? And if it's something where it helps a community so that the community can do that, tell us that. But somehow tie the proposal into why is this project so important? Why should we support this when we have so many other proposals? How is it unique? Now, a lot of times you'll read proposals where, oh, somebody's going out and they're going to collect biomaterials from, say, lemurs. Somebody's going to collect genetic material, or somebody's going to do in a population census somewhere. Lots of people do population censusing. Lots of people do genetic testing. What makes your project so unique? And if you have, and a lot of us and reviewers too are familiar with many, many projects. So if there are other projects in your area or other people working on something similar, you should probably tell us that and let us know so that we're not saying, doesn't this look like somebody else's project that's also requested funding? So tell us, how is your work special? What makes it different? Metrics of success. That was brought up by Jen a little while ago. Very often we are asked by the Association of Zoos and Aquariums, our own boards, our visitors, how do we know that we're making a difference in conservation? And for zoos to stay relevant, we really want people to see us as conservation organizations. So what is it? What is it that can be measured that demonstrates that a difference is being made? And for the reviewer, we're reading the materials and methods section, and if we agree with the your hypothesis or the objective of the project and the way you're going to get that information, and then finally how you're going to evaluate it, then we're also saying we agree with your metrics of conservation. Now, some metrics are harder to quantify. For example, an awareness program. You might be able to tell us we reached this many students, we did a post test, and this is what they learned. But will it make a difference for wildlife 20 years up the road? We don't know. There's a lot of things that can influence someone's conservation related behaviors, and we may not see differences for generations. But get as close to it as you can. Give us something so that we can say the work being done in this project is benefiting those species that everybody cares about. We want to know how the information will be used. So if somebody says we're going to, what will come out of this is a journal article. Okay, it'll go to the Journal of Animal Behavior, for example, or the Journal of Ecology. That's great. You know, it's always good to have a publication, and it's good to have a publication that somebody can refer to. It's new information. We get that. But how is that alone going to contribute to conservation? So if you say, we're producing a paper, and that paper will be used by the wildlife authorities in the Democratic Republic of Congo to manage gorilla populations. Tell us how this information will be used. This isn't about just getting somebody a graduate degree. It's got to have some real application. And I think I already touched upon the existing support for the project. Well, no, actually, I talked about similar projects in an area. What I meant by existing support for a project, here's where we love to see letters of endorsement. Show us from the authorities you're working with, the organization person, somebody from the Species Survival Commission, a community leader. Show us that this project is needed and wanted. Show us something where somebody else is telling us you're capable of doing the work that you're saying that you're going to do, and it's of value. I personally, I don't like to see proposals where somebody writes, and we're going to go into 3 villages and give these presentations. If there's no indication from anyone in the village or from any of the authorities that anybody is interested in this, show us that somebody other than you is really interested in this project, that there's some real value to it. That's what we're getting to. And of course, as you probably know, have all your permits in line, you know, your animal care and use permits, whatever it is that you need, import, export permits, make sure you have that as well. But make sure that there's existing support for the project. Budget, this is a big one. Make sure that it is well justified and well described. You should be able to tell us, by us reading that matrix, that table, how the money will be used. Now, keep it itemized. Now, we're not saying that for things that are, you know, $10 to $100, that you necessarily have to give a lot of detail. But when we see things like $5,000 for the workshop, well, what does that mean? Or this much for a contractor. Okay, what does that get you? So usually on a separate sheet of paper, somebody will say, you know, for item 1, the contractor is used for this part of the study. Their rate is this much per hour. This is how much we're going to need for that. Or for fuel, or for production of workshop materials. Give us detail. We shouldn't have to go back to the person who wrote the proposal and say, what does this mean? We don't get it. So we want to know how the money will be used. It's got to be in the appropriate level of detail. For larger amounts, give us more detail. Um, there are people who will review proposals who will say, you know, I saw um, this satellite transmitter that was used in a similar study, and it was only $100 per transmitter. Why are they asking for 300? Give us that kind of information. Explain it to us. That level of detail. Again, if it's something very small, we don't need that. But if you're asking for large chunks of money, you'd like to know more about how the money will be spent. A topic that comes up a lot, administrative costs. We know that it costs money to run an organization. Just like here at the zoo, you know, there's a cost for providing all the administrative services for what we do here. And we acknowledge that, and we're happy to provide some of those funds. Now, I would say that don't ask for any more than 5 to 10% for the administrative costs. There are some universities who require a very large amount, and for us, we have to find ways around that, or we ask for a letter from the university that will exempt this particular grant. So I'm not saying that you can't ask for administrative costs. I think you should. I think it's also okay to ask for assistance with salary. People need to be paid in the field, and we understand that. Um, One thing that also helps is match, and that is show us that we're not the only ones who are going to fund this project. That you've done your research, you're looking at other organizations and seeing what's available. Maybe you've put in for them to help you. With some grants, we find that if we provide some funds, that can be used as match for larger funds later on. So match is critical. And one of the another reason for match is that if you come to us, if we support you when there's no match, and the next time you apply to us and there's still no match, it makes us feel like, well, what happens if we no longer support this project? We want you to be successful, and we're happy to steer you to other organizations that may help fund the project as well. But it really helps when the reviewer sees that there's interest from other organizations. Those organizations can even be your own organization that's paying some of the salary costs, the travel costs, or whatever. But we like to see that you have some, in the phrases, that you have some skin in the game, okay? Also, make sure you convert the funds to the grantor's currency. Most people give us funds in, or give us a budget that's in dollars, which is great, but we've seen other forms of currency in there, and then we have to do conversions. So what you want to do is make this as easy on the review committee as you can, and speak their language, show funds in their currency. Okay. The last thing I want to go over are some of the things that a reviewer may consider. And one thing, I can't believe this even happens, but we'll get proposals from organizations, and we'll go to that organization's website, and we won't see a word about either the project or the subject area. And so we want to be sure that this project is legit. One of the things Jennifer mentioned earlier is there are scams out there, and there are people who write convincing proposals who may not be who they say they are, and they may not be doing the project that they say they're going to do. So we help. One of the ways to validate this is to take a look at the website and say, hey, you know, is this person really on the staff of this organization? Is the organization really doing this kind of work? And sometimes we find that they're not. The experience of the PI. We always ask for people's resumes and their references, but the resume should show us that you have experience doing whatever it is that you're proposing. And if this is something where you've had the training but you haven't actually done it, well, let us know that. Let us know where you're getting the training, and you know how you're going to assure us that this work will be successful. When a PI says something like, and believe me, this happens. Sometimes people will write a whole proposal. It'll be a basic scientific proposal, and then they'll stick in to make it more, to make it appeal to us more. They'll put in a line that says, "And we'll also educate 3 villages." There's nothing in their experience that shows that they have any kind of teaching experience, that they've ever done any kind of workshops. That's the kind of thing we look for. Make sure they have, um, that the applicant has the experience to be able to carry out the project. Another thing that we look at is the perspective of your colleagues. Um, if you are doing a project, you should probably be involved in some of the professional organizations for that that area of study. You may be on a board. You may be part of the IUCN Species Survival Commission, or you may be a member of Partners in Amphibian and Reptiles Conservation. Whatever it is, show us that you have a professional background in this field that you are interested in studying. With collegiate or colleague perspective, you know, we award a lot of grants and many different species. So it's not unusual for a reviewer to say, hey, you know, we support somebody who's doing something similar, but maybe a different species. I wonder if that person has something to say about you. And and this has really helped us in some instances. Um, so so we do kind of do a little bit of the background check when this information isn't available to us in the grant application. And then we'll look at the grant criteria form. And I'm going to hold this up. There you go. That. Our reviewers have a score sheet, and it's got criteria on it. How many points do we give to budget and financials? How many points to the project design? How many points to community involvement or the educational component? All of these things um, are criteria for evaluating the proposal. And when you fill out an application, and the application is found on our website, you will be addressing these different questions. So those I think are the big things for us. Um, like I said, our grant program is on hold this year. We are continuing to support our our conservation obligations and some of the projects that we have in the field or that we're involved in with partners. So there will be some conservation funding going out this year, but next year we're hoping to get the grant program up and running again in whatever form that takes. But we're excited about it. So with that, I will just ask if anyone has any questions.